Gordo's phone must stink, dude.
It goes on the ass skin, not the ass crack. It's not like I suitcase it.
You're going to get pink eye.
Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, a show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about The Office. The Office went 188 episodes over 9 seasons on NBC. Today we're talking about episode 1, which was called Pilot, originally airing March 24th, 2005. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the boys, all the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Hey-o.
I'm Hitler.
Oh.
Yo.
What?
Hey.
So, happy 200th episode, everyone. Wow. First off,
Yeah, wow.
I just want to say, just because we're doing The Office, big show, we wanted to save it for a big moment. Episode 200 seemed like the time to do it. And because it's a show that might attract a few new people, I do want to say right up front, just a reminder of what we do is we watch the first televised episode of a show and we try our best to rate it based on just that episode and try not to think of all the things we know about the show. The Office is a gigantic show for most of us, a show we've watched over a million times. And obviously things are going to come up, but we really try to just be as singular viewed as we can, as impossible as it is, and rate it that way. But that's just, for anyone new who might be listening, we've talked about it so much, I don't have to ask the question. I know we've all watched it. Sans Gordo.
Nope, I have not. This is the second episode that I've seen of this show.
Do you remember what the other one was by any chance?
It was the Mussolini one. I think it was actually at like Joe's wedding. You put it on.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to cover it, but like, I don't know, it feels so weird. This is the most familiar with the show I am going into an episode, more than any other show we've covered.
But Jay, you said you're a super fan, and you said there's 188 episodes. Isn't there 202?
Right. Depending on your source and depending on how you count the two-parters, then yes, 188 individual episodes. There's a lot of two-part episodes, which would stretch it out to 201. So yes, so thank you for addressing that, Ferg.
There are also some people out there who might be in the school of thought that we should have done the UK Office first. And I will say, I am one of those people. I think we maybe should have done it first.
But I'll say this, The Office is one of those rare examples, too, where even Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, who created the show, will tell you the US version has eclipsed the UK version.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close, yeah.
And I think your average Office watcher, even a lot of super fans, have not watched the UK version start to finish. I have. I've watched every UK episode there is.
It's been a long time, but I have, yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a rare example. And we did talk about doing it that way originally, and because of theme months and stuff, it got to a point where it was like numerically impossible to make it work out in a way that we did them like back to back. So here we are. Obviously, we've talked about, we all watched the show. Do you remember when you got into it? Because I feel like I was a few seasons in and then I kind of played catch up.
I want to say 3 or 4.
I have like literally the exact memory of when I watched it. It was the third season was on, but the first 2 seasons were on DVD. And the apartment I lived in, everybody was gone home for Christmas, and I came home and was alone. And I was like, oh, what do I do? So I put on, I was like, I guess I'll try The Office, because the DVDs were there. My roommate had them. And then I spent the next day and a half just watching seasons 1 and 2, like all the way through.
I can even tell you my first episode I ever watched. It was the episode when they're on the retreat and Andy falls into the water in the sumo suit and rushes down. And then I went back. That's late, though. I went back and watched the entire show after that because I got hooked.
I think that's kind of how maybe a lot of people did it, because this show really didn't pop off until probably around the third or fourth, right? Is when
that's when it really started like blowing up.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe when a majority of people who weren't watching from the beginning got into it.
And just to go back a second too, I remember my first episode was one of those like late nights, and it was already like a weird hour, and they were airing an episode. I forget on what channel. It was the basketball game, and catching that, and I didn't know what the show was. I'm like, what is this? And it like just caught me. I was pretty hooked after that.
So none of you watched from the first episode? Whoa.
Not day one.
Not from when it aired, yeah.
Okay.
But by the time the show was like really in its meat and potatoes, like number one show like in the country, like we were all watching week to week at that point.
Gotcha.
I will say though, they went through some thoughts as what the pilot was going to be, and they almost made the pilot the Dundies, and I'm so glad they didn't. I'm glad they gave themselves the time, because it's the first episode of season 2, and I think that is like an episode you could show anybody from any point who'd never seen it and be like, this is this show, and they'd probably be into it.
So yeah, this is basically a shot for shot, and because I don't want to talk too much about the show as a whole, I want to focus on episode 1, and I don't want this episode for us to last 50 hours. But the pilot that we're doing now, the first aired episode of the U.S. Office, is basically a shot for shot remake of the UK first episode, slightly modified. There are some changes throughout it, but it is extremely close, which is why, like, even when you look at the writing credits, the writers are considered to be Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant, and then Greg Daniels, because he just punched up the episode a little bit.
So instead of Jello, it's like shepherd's pie.
Gordo, have you ever had shepherd's pie before? Because I feel like the gag would really be lost where you couldn't see the stapler inside the shepherd's pie.
I was just trying to think of something British.
But yeah, no, I don't want to spend too much time digging into it. Couple numbers. IMDb has this as a 9.0 for the series. Rotten Tomatoes, 81% critic, 89% audience. And obviously, if you want to watch The Office, Peacock is now the home for that in the US. A lot of other countries, you can still watch it on Netflix. In this country, you can watch it on Netflix if you have a VPN. As far as we go, you can go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links. If you're new, if you want to subscribe, follow our socials, S1E1pod on Instagram, X, stuff like that. We would really appreciate it. Go buy a t-shirt, things of that nature. Let's get right into it, right? So the intro, the song is just this upbeat kind of jingle style song, no lyrics to it, and we're just seeing various shots inside of the office and of the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the show takes place. I know it's one of those, again, big picture. We've heard it a million times. It's a bit of an earworm nowadays. It is huge kind of culturally. But I think just first impression or fake first impression, for what it is, I mean, like, while I'm watching it, the song's upbeat. Everything I'm viewing is kind of dull because it's just people working in an office.
And it's shot kind of gray and dull for the first season.
So I don't know exactly what I'm about to get into based on just that intro. Well, I guess I do, but I don't know how it's something funny yet.
I would like to go into the song a little bit too. And Jay, this was your ringback tone for a while. Remember when ringback tones were a thing?
I was going to bring that up.
I forgot he had one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when we used to call people on the phone? They'd have a ringback tone? Oh, thank you, Satan, for texting. But
Jay's the only one I know that had one.
What did you pay for that?
I forget. I don't even know if that was like something you had to pay for or not. I really don't remember anymore. But I do remember consciously at that time thinking like, I need something that if my boss calls, it's not weird. You know what I mean? Like I needed something that was like a fair compromise.
But did you need to buy the ringtone?
I don't remember. I mean, I remember we bought ringtones for a while, but then we also didn't buy ringtones for, so I don't remember.
Yeah, once you could do it as an MP3, you didn't have to pay for it anymore. But like,
yeah, I mean, it could have been like a cheap service or something, you know, like I'm also not afraid to throw money at dumb things. So I really don't remember.
If you want to throw back in time, I remember the first ringtone I ever bought was Hey Roll Over DJ by Jet, because I was like obsessed with that song for that album came out. And now I'm like, oh, that song's so bad. Why did I have that as my ringtone?
Mine was an 8-bit version of Salt and Pepper.
I think that was when ringtones were funner, when they were like video game style music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once it became actual clips of songs, it was like, I don't know, it lost its luster. It was too easy.
Hello, Moto.
But yeah, so the theme song, they were originally going to use real music, and they had the cast vote. It was like a Modest Mouse song, something else, and then Mr. Blue Sky by ELO, which is one of the greatest songs ever written, and they all voted on ELO.
Is it though?
Are we going to get an ELO fight right now? But it turns out it was used on another show, so they're like, oh, we have to do something else. So they got a composer to do it, this guy Jay Ferguson. And Ferg, he did the theme music to Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Nice.
As well as Tremors 4.
Neat.
So Freddie brought up.
It is neat.
But he also did the piano on the Keith Moon solo album that is fucking terrible. So I always love when this happens and I'm like, oh, I've got that album. I've got something this guy played on.
Oh, wait, 5's the Dream Child. That's the worst one.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, and neither is the Keith Moon album or Tremors 4. But hey, he's part of the Freddie canon.
Tremors 4, the one in the Old West?
I think so, yeah.
I know that's a prequel, but I think it's 4. Counts as 4.
With that in mind, right from this intro, first scene, we see basically just someone sitting in his boss's office. You know, that's Jim and Michael, as we come to find out. And they're going over things like a sale that he recently was trying to put through with the library. Turns out Jim wasn't able to close it. And then Michael's like, oh, so you've come to the master for guidance. Is that what you're saying, Grasshopper? And you get this immediate, because the show is being filmed in a documentary style that we don't know what the documentary is for, but this is truly filmed as a documentary. Michael's very performative, and this is the first glance we get at it, because as soon as he does the grasshopper, you get that his eye goes over to the camera, almost for that he wants to see if he's getting any reception from the studio that's filming this.
This episode has the most camera looks and the most dead, awkward dead air pauses of any episode, and I still think it's super funny.
Yeah.
Also, Steve Carell pre-hair plugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think he still doesn't admit to. They just claim that he combed his hair tight.
You know what's funny too is if you watch the Superfan episodes, in the handbag episode, there's actually a conversation with Pam and Jim where they're talking about him hitting on her. He's like, it's not going to work. He's 40 years old. He's losing his hair. And oh, they cut that one real quick out of the for air stuff, huh?
Yeah, so they're in the office and he's like, all right, let me show you how it's done. He's talking to the other manager and basically gets the deal done pretty quick. And then he goes, oh, thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar. And then I'm sorry. My mistake. And then hangs up. He's like, it was a woman I was talking to. She had a really low voice.
Probably a smoker.
But he does. This is a thing of the show. Michael is impossible, but when it comes to sales, he's very good at what he does.
And sales is hard. I've worked in sales before. It's not easy. It is hard to do it for a long time.
And you think it'd be it wouldn't be his skill set. Just, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but even right from the beginning, you just see he's a bit of a tryhard. Usually when you think with sales, you're going to be a little bit more charismatic and charming. And, the guy who's doing the forced humor is usually not the guy that you put your trust in and want to, do business with.
I don't even think likable Gordo, because again, I've been around it a lot. I think some people are likable and upbeat and friendly, and that's the style. And there's some people who are just scary, and that works too. You're scaring somebody into being afraid to buy stuff.
But Michael's neither.
Well, Michael's neither. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Right off the bat, I'm like, oh my god, I don't like this guy.
I don't think it's the intent to like him. See, this is so tough too, because when you consider the ethos for this being the UK version, David Brent is always unlikable, right? That's kind of one of the main differences is that they move towards Michael being more likable. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could ever talk about this show without thinking about the surrounding circumstances of it, it's just...
Well, Steve Carell, who plays Michael, didn't watch the performance of David Brent. He didn't watch the original Office specifically to not copycat.
I think that's smart. Also, I can't think of a one-to-one US actor who could pull off curmudgeonly the way that Ricky Gervais does.
Yeah, that's just one of those characters that is through the actor. It's not that he created it. It's because it's so much Ricky.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky Gervais is the one who suggested that Michael's character be good at his job, or at least at sales, because he said the idea, the way American business works, my character wouldn't have a job. So you need to give him something that makes sense for him to still be there. So that's why we see right up front with the sales call, Jim, who we follow throughout this episode, who I think is the guy that the viewer is supposed to identify with as one of the more normal people in the office, can't close a sale. And then Michael, of all people, is the one who gets it done with no effort.
Just a quick phone call, not even face to face. Yeah.
That like next scene, we see Michael like in front of the office as you're about to like walk in, where he's going to basically be doing a tour for the camera crew. And he's talking directly to the camera here. And he's saying like, I'm Michael. I've been at Dunder Mifflin for 12 years. The last 4 as a regional manager. And then he's walking in. And he's kind of showing everybody his kingdom, as he says. You know what's funny is, watching the show and as it goes on, like Michael's seen as, being there forever. And 12 years is a long time. But for all of us, like, I mean, we've been at our jobs, around that amount of time.
14 years.
12 years, actually, exactly for me.
13 myself.
Coming up on 10.
Yeah, nope. So it's funny. Well, but it's just one of those, the way that, for the perception in this office, like, oh, he's been here forever. And then you look at like our own jobs now and you go like, was it that long? Like, I don't know.
Where's my regional manager job?
And and he's been manager for 4. So it only took him 8 years.
I mean, he must be good at his job. He must be good at sales, and it's clearly shown that he is.
And this, for me, this is the first time in my life. I mean, I've been at the same company for 13 years, but the last year and change is the first time I've been like in a more office-like setting where I sit at a desk and stuff like that. Like, I know more of you guys have had that experience through life. So I think I can look at this with a little bit different of a lens as I could before, now that I have a little bit more office experience.
Yeah, when I think of this show now, I think of that this makes a lot of sense for how offices were at that time. And then I think really funnily, Silicon Valley did a really great job of explaining what offices are more like sort of now. Like this was like, or like an established office to like a startup. Like, because I've seen both of those lenses in my life, right? Where like you have that very startup-y, like we all get beer on Friday. And then the very like uptight, stiff, quiet office. And I think both those two shows capture that like void of the middle, like doesn't exist. It's either just like your brick wall in a basement and it's fun all the time versus like, everyone's wearing a suit and it's like real work to do.
Yeah.
When Michael walks up to Pam is the receptionist, first introduces the camera crew to her and says like, oh, if you think she's cute now, you should have seen her a couple of years ago. And she just goes, what? Like, the what that she gives is probably like one of my favorite parts of the episode, like the shock of it. I don't know why. It's just one of those weird little, this is definitely an episode that's built on small moments. And that is like one of those ones that for whatever reason flags to me.
It's crazy thinking now too, in like a modern setting where like you'd be fired or like and I know like not to
you
talk
wouldn't
about
make it through that sentence. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be in a lot of trouble for that comment.
And that's why it's funny.
She's trying to give him like the facts from corporate. And he's like, oh, what do we do with special things from corporate? And he, like tosses it in the trash barrel. And it's all, again, he's trying really hard to just perform for this camera crew.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's bit after bit after bit.
I'd be terrified to be followed around at work all day in an office by a camera crew. Like I would quit. I'd be like, I can't be here anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, imagine that. Like, imagine being in your office and one day your boss is like, oh, by the way, there's gonna be a camera crew here indefinitely. Like following everybody around. You have to go do in-person interviews daily. Like you're adding work. This would never fly. This would never fly. Unless you're being like compensated extra somehow, it would never work.
I always think of the Ozzy Osbourne sibling who was like, fuck that, I'm not being on this show. That like nobody knows because they're not famous. They were like, they lived in the house, they were there the whole time, and they were like, if you film me, I will sue you. Fuck this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone always has that feeling like maybe after this show came out, especially like my work could be a TV show.
Everybody says that at my work, and then I say, you're not that interesting. Stop.
Because everybody's the hero of their own shit, and their shit's usually not funny,
I mean, this show is showing you an office about like not an exciting product at all, and that they sell paper products.
Yeah.
Which proves that, I mean, really, I guess if the writing's good, you can make a show about anything.
I could see my job, like with the work that we do and such, and the people, but don't think that would happen.
I like the idea of that quarter with like Werner Herzog doing a voiceover. And then Gordo goes in to get his lunch. It's like, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
So we get this talking head from Michael, and this is, we see a lot of these throughout the show which is like the single interviews that they're doing to play into the documentary style.
Is this the first show that does this style?
I mean, there's the British Office.
Okay, in the U.S.
Oh, we've discussed this. Reno 911 was, I think, first.
Yeah, it's by a couple years actually. Yeah, and like a few people from this are like Oscar had like a recurring role in Reno 911.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even then, I mean, there's probably ones that we're not, recalling. Off the top, though, Reno 911 is the only one I can think of that was documentary style, though.
I think the way they do the talking heads thing here, though, was definitely
yeah,
mimicked way more later. Right? Like this was the first one because it almost feels like the Real World, right? Like remember the Real World when it was like new? They had like the little room you'd go into, what they call it, testimonial or whatever, confessional. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious because a lot of shows mimicked this afterwards, like Parks and Rec, Superstore.
This became a thing afterwards, for sure.
It became its own
like
style.
a big thing.
I mean, even still to this day too. I know we're going to cover it eventually, but like St. Dennis Medical.
Yep.
That is the same playbook.
Now I'll say this: this is one of the shows for just on this episode alone. You know, you can say it very comfortably that this is one of the few shows that does this, though, that is true to the documentary style, like to a T. That doesn't break it. That doesn't do things that wouldn't happen in a documentary.
Yeah, they're always strong about having a camera where a camera would be, even if it's hidden. It's not like wrestling where you're like, why would there be a camera backstage here and they're not acknowledging that it's here? They always know there's a camera, there's a reason for everything.
And sometimes like you have shots where if it is a conversation that the camera shouldn't see, you could tell that the camera's hiding somewhere to catch it.
There'll be like a bush in front of it. Like
yeah.
Leaves.
So it's never like a private conversation that's not meant for camera with a camera right in their face. Like they're very smart about how would this fit into a documentary. So, and in Michael's talking head, he's in his office. He's talking himself up about how people say he's the best boss and how people think he's hilarious and how he gets the best out of them. And then he shows like the mug that says world's best boss, like, which he shows it in a way where you're to assume that it was given to him. And he goes, pick this up at Spencer Gifts.
And Spencer Gifts, I'm sure, has made a fucking $1 million selling these in the subsequent years.
Yeah.
How many years later is it? How ubiquitous is it? I think I told you guys the other day, like, I've got 2 different Office books for my baby, right? Like, Christmas time, there's Office ornaments for sale. Like, it's never going away. It is holding on.
But you know what's crazy is like, yeah, that mug now, there's probably 1 million that are Office branded boxes or whatever that sell the world's best boss mug. But that was like a thing that existed before, right? But probably just no one ever really trademarked it. So there's probably some poor fucking sap who originally created it who's just out like $1 billion.
But that was my idea.
Yeah.
But at Spencer, though, you'd think that the more likely gift would be like a world's worst boss, right? Because you're giving like a funny Spencer's gift thing. I forget what we said about Spencer.
Or a big old dildo.
Like a dildo, yeah.
Yeah, it's like dildos, mugs, and like Alan Jackson t-shirts. It's the weirdest fucking store.
Blacklight posters.
A nice hemp shirt. Yeah.
But that said, every time I go to the mall, I'm like, well, we have to go in Spencer's. I don't think I ever buy anything, but I'm always like, we got to look around. It's always the same.
I do the same thing.
I don't know if I've ever bought anything from Spencer's, but I've gone in every time.
Like, wow, look how much shit they fit into this small little store.
Yeah, right. It's like wall-to-wall shit. Poop everywhere.
Now we're cutting to Dwight at his desk. He's like singing the Little Drummer Boy to himself as he's like getting all set up.
You know, it's funny. That's Angela's favorite song, which I'm not supposed to know right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of full circle stuff down the line.
It's hard with this, but you're like, that'll come up later. I was like, oh!
He like takes his phone receiver out of a drawer and then like connects it to his phone, like, which was like so weird.
A locked drawer.
But I can't help but think that, I mean, we see later in this episode his relationship with Jim. So I feel like there's probably a reason that he hides his phone.
Yeah, I can see that.
You can also see Jim picking that lock easily.
Also true.
I was going to say, those locks aren't that hard to pick.
No, those are meant for like in a flash, like someone can't just open it up and take something, you know?
Yeah.
This isn't like your fireproof safe or something. I mean, I'm sure it's a better lock than those bike locks were, those like U-locks or whatever, and people figured out you could pick those with a Bic pen. So I imagine Jim was not having a hard time getting into Dwight's drawer if he needed to.
While he's doing this too, you see like on Jim's face, just being like so tired. It's like the beginning of the day. and he's already just tired just being next to this guy. Like the fact that they work side by side every day, this is not the person he wants to be near.
I could see that.
Jim's like the young one in the office. Everyone else is a little older, and it's like that's their last stop. Not where you want to end up when you're his age. So he's over the whole place.
Because his talking head's next. And he's talking about how, what his job is, and talking about, my job's to speak to clients on the phone about quantities and copy paper and whether we can supply it to them. And he just goes, I'm sorry, I'm boring myself just talking about this. Yeah, this is a job you just kind of fall into one day,
I will say I do have experience selling copier paper, as I did about a year and a half working at Staples when we were in high school. I knew a lot of useless knowledge about like weight and bond and type, especially for like people used to get like special paper for their resumes and all sorts of stuff. This is like early 2002 or so.
Oh, linen paper?
Yeah, all that stuff. Or paper that smelled a certain way.
2005, this is the tail end, if at all, of like Dunder Mifflin, a paper company, cannot exist in like 2025.
Well, the company this is based on is still in business.
I think all businesses still use paper. We have paper everywhere.
Yeah. I don't understand how like there's room for like paper suppliers that act on this small scale.
Because they're regional.
But there's no, they were already struggling with it in this show. In flash forward 20 years, with the Amazons and the instance of everything now, like I just don't see how.
How often do you see like a WB Mason truck though? Like when I worked downtown in the city, those trucks were left and right up and down the street.
My office
delivering
was
stuff.
WB Mason, and what's the other one? There's another
Staples
one.
is what we use.
Well, no, but we're talking about things other than Staples. Is the point?
Yeah, like the non like major. I don't even think the other ones exist anymore. I think like Office Depot and Office Max are maybe gone.
But so what is the advantage of?
So they're able to offer lower prices in these big giant retail places like Office Max.
No, don't forget too, like there are some people who will wholeheartedly forever be like, I just want to shop at the small local place. And some places survive alone on that. Think of how many coffee shops are in every town you've ever lived in that have diehard customers who go every day. They refuse to go to Starbucks. They refuse to go to Dunkin' Donuts. Right? There are those people who want to support that. And if you've got people in long-term relationships and they can give you a really good deal and them over there, like that's going to make you go for a while. I mean, the company that this is based on has been around since 1922 and they're still going.
But I feel like when you talk about like a cafe, like I feel like that's such an apples and oranges thing. Like, a place that makes like a small batch of coffee versus like the turn and burn from like Starbucks and Dunks, like quick cup you're getting, like it's such a different quality. Where with some of these things, and listen, maybe because it's not my game, it feels like paper is not quite one of those things.
So I just did a Google search, paper supplier near me. And I'd say it's not giving me distances, but I'm looking at the map. I'd say this is probably a 50-mile radius. There's like 10 small paper suppliers. There's one company that seems to be pretty big, but still like a smaller, like almost like a Dunder Mifflin, but they have like a bunch of locations. So, they exist. Like there's obviously the Staples and stuff around here too, but there's a bunch of other small suppliers around. So
it's so wild to me.
The actual answer is they stay in business because they have the customer service. Where, say you had a paper emergency, Staples will be like, oh, we'll get it to you on Monday on a holiday, where this place will rush it to you because there's that distributor to customer service.
Because you're not talking at that point buying one ream of paper, right? Like when I used to work at Staples, people would come in and be like, can I get a case of paper, right? And you'd like climb the ladder and they'd be like, hey, let the 16-year-old almost kill himself 12 fucking stories in the air holding a box of paper on his head.
Especially Joe with pants that are so tight that he can't go up the rungs.
It did cause issues, but luckily the grip of a Converse sneaker really saved my life numerous times.
This is jingling up that whole ladder.
But also, too, you're thinking of like a small office, and that's probably not the best place to think about. You're thinking of like a court or a law office, right? Where they're going through so much paper. You have so many filings, things to be signed, or like a big real estate firm, right? Where there's like physical hard signatures have to be done. You need to print all that stuff out. When we bought our house, I signed paper for an hour. I don't even know what all of it meant. I don't know if I actually own this place, but I signed papers for over an hour and it was like reams of paper, right? So if you do that 10 times a day, like you want a discount, you're going to want to get it when you need it and have someone you know.
Yay, paper.
Yeah, I'm pro paper. As somebody who does all their notes on real paper and actually buys paper very often, I support this.
I keep a notebook near my hand, but that's about it. I write little things as we go along, but I do type out my notes. Next scene, we cut back outside. We have Michael walk out and just do the old "What's up?" Was the Budweiser commercials?
Yeah. Budweiser, yeah.
I was surprised that Jim does it back.
Yeah, he does it, but he is immediately sarcastic too. And I still love that after 7 years. And then Dwight's jumping in with it, obviously, and they exchange some what's ups for a few more minutes, and then it just gets like real quiet, and Michael doesn't know what to do from there, and then he just goes, "What?" She was like, "Oh, nothing." He's just hoping for the camaraderie to like be building from there.
This isn't that far removed from the end of the "Was Up" commercials, right? This is 2005. That was only a couple of years.
Well, Jim said after 7 years.
Yeah, so it must have been what, late 90s, early 2000s.
Says the What's Up campaign ran from 1999 to 2002.
2 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
So yeah, it tracks.
Not as good as Bitter Beer Face, which I think was a better beer campaign.
Yeah, they had the frogs.
The frogs we also had, yeah.
They had a run, man. There was a good run. Like when Super Bowl commercials, like I feel like the focus isn't there anymore. Nowadays, there's like a couple good ones, but then it's more
you
like
look forward to it. But
there's a couple like movie announcements or trailers you might catch now, but it's not the same.
That's what changed. Is people look more forward to the trailers because now it's a big deal that they put the next Marvel movie trailer or the next big trailer on there. Which that wasn't a thing back in the day. It really was just the funny commercials.
Because I mean, look at the price.
Yeah, millions of dollars.
Yeah, millions of dollars. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, no, but I agree. Like, there's something changed, and I don't even know when it changed that the Super Bowl ads just stopped being a thing.
I don't know, but it was officially when I stopped watching the Super Bowl because I used to only watch it for the commercials, and it was like, These aren't that good, and if you want to see any of them, they'll be on YouTube tomorrow. I was like, cool, I'm not watching this anymore.
The last one I truly enjoyed was when Mr. Peanut died.
But I'm so glad they brought him back. Did I show you the giant Mr. Peanut head I bought last week?
No.
It's like a giant yellow resin Mr. Peanut head that's like bigger than my head. It's the kind of thing you walk into a store and you go, that was put there for me to purchase. I will take this home immediately.
That's great.
Shortly after all this, Jan walks in and you have Jan is like Michael's boss. So she's coming in to check up on some things. You have a Michael like voiceover talking head mix where he's talking about her a bit. He refers to her as Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Laura Harden, too, also in my favorite Disney movie of all time, The Rocketeer.
We don't see her in this episode, but Meredith from The Office, who's almost from the next episode on, she's not in the pilot itself, but she did audition to play Jan originally.
Interesting.
Kate Flannery.
I just can't see that work. Like, she's just her own character so much, yeah.
Well, because the character she wound up with is such a polar opposite.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have a few cases of that. I mean, Angela Kinsey, who plays Angela in the show, she auditioned to be Pam. You have Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight, who auditioned to be Michael.
Who poor Rainn Wilson, I think, just lost his house in those crazy fires in LA. Yeah,
he did.
Yeah.
Do you know what he has a great turn in a show that we covered? He is amazing in Mom.
Oh, was he?
Oh,
I didn't know he was in
that.
Yeah, so as the seasons go on, he ends up playing the mother's psychiatrist, who then like loses his mind too, and he just becomes like more and more crazy as the seasons go on. He's pretty great in it.
You know what I first like have a memory of seeing Rainn Wilson in was Entourage.
That's right. He was like a reporter.
Yeah, like a Comic-Con. I ended up sleeping with like 3 porn stars.
Yeah.
I remember Galaxy Quest is probably the first time I saw him.
But now, yeah, we cut to Michael, who's in a meeting with Jan now, and Pam's also in there taking notes. And they're like, all right, so anything you wanted to add to the agenda? And he's like, oh, I didn't have one. She's like, I faxed it over to you this morning.
He's also performative here too. He's like, me no get an agenda. Like he's doing voices and
he's so annoying. Yeah.
It's so fucking hard to watch. Yeah.
And she's like, remember you put it in the garbage? The one you said was the special file cabinet for corporate?
It's just such a receipt for the comment.
Yes, it is a perfect fucking receipt.
And he's like, that was a joke. And then he's like trying to like backtrack. He's like, that was a joke. That was actually my brother's joke. And it's supposed to be for bills. And it doesn't even really work with faxes. Trying to like rescind it now, but
That joke also doesn't work too, where it's like, I threw the light bill away because I don't want to pay it. And then your lights go out. You're like, well, who loses here? You know what I mean?
Through this meeting is when we're finding out that Jan's saying that with everything going on in the company right now, they can't justify having a branch in Scranton, which is where this one is, and also Stamford. So basically, it's looking like one of these two branches is going to have to close down.
Interesting.
It's almost like we're setting up 3 seasons worth of storylines in the pilot.
Yeah, it's crazy how long it takes for that payoff.
I know.
I mean, but we don't know that.
And they mentioned Josh here too, who becomes like an integral character later on, like a couple seasons later.
As this meeting with Jan's going on, by the way, is when the telephone rings. This is the first time we learn of Todd Packer. He's like, oh, Todd Packer, terrific rep. He's like, you mind if I take it? And then as soon as he picks up, he's like, hey, you big queen. He's like, oh, that's not appropriate. He goes, hey, is Godzilla coming in today?
Was it already Champ Kind doing the voice? I know that's not his name, but I don't know the actor's actual name.
David Koechner. It's not him yet.
Okay.
This is Toby Huss, already the strongest man in the world.
Neat!
This is the first time, though, again, I've seen this pilot maybe 50 times, that I realized he said Godzilla as a reference to Hillary Rodham Clinton. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's like a new joke I never picked up on.
Me too. This is the first time I caught that one also.
Yeah.
And then he goes, one question I've been meaning to ask in reference to Jen. Do the carpets match the drapes? I'm like kind of surprised. Like she doesn't react. She just ignores it. She's like, I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
You almost wonder, like, why is she ignoring? Also, like, it's made known that this person on the phone's an employee.
Yeah.
She should immediately be like, hey, Todd, Godzilla here. You're fucking fired, Todd.
Yeah.
Like, that's what would make the most sense. Yeah.
Or you'd think she'd say, well, that makes my decision which place to close a little easier.
Yeah, like, I don't know why she just, like, swallows it. It didn't, like, make sense to me.
The first downsizing should be Todd Packer.
Although I think he sticks around too. He's kind of like the Michael situation where he's also good at his job and he brings it in. So
which is why they let him like work the road.
Yeah.
And that's a fucking wild gig, man. Imagine being a traveling salesperson. That's
I would
fucking
get
insane.
nothing done. With that much freedom, I would get nothing done.
But imagine it like your product is paper. I know we spoke up, we gave paper its ups. Now I'm going to give it its downs. How do you go door to door selling paper?
It's like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when Dale's the shower ring salesman. It's like, how many shower curtain rings do you have to sell on the road to make ends meet? I can't even fucking imagine.
Right?
Kind of makes me, do you ever see that movie, The Founder, with Michael Keaton? The one where basically we learn the story about how his character like robs McDonald's from the actual McDonald's brothers.
No, but for some reason I get reels for that all the time on Instagram.
Because he starts off as like a traveling salesman, and that's kind of how he meets the McDonald's brothers. First off, it's a phenomenal movie. Also, I'm surprised McDonald's didn't do everything in their power to shut that movie down, because it paints this dude as the worst dude on earth.
And he lived for like a long time, bought like a baseball team. Like he was around and doing shit with his money. He had a lot of money.
I also think of Kip and Uncle Rico selling Tupperware in Napoleon Dynamite. And he goes to show them that it's indestructible and just goes to back the van over it, and it just explodes.
I think the founder, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that Michael Keaton plays, but
is it Kroc?
Something like
Ray
that.
Kroc.
But I think he's just he sells like blenders or something like that. Like that's like how it starts.
Man, for Tupperware, Dick, so they started remaking Tupperware the way that we had it when we were kids, like when our parents bought it in the 80s at Tupperware parties. So we went
forever again?
Yeah, so here's the thing. They look amazing. It's the exact same stuff, only it's a little better. It doesn't stain like it used to. We bought a ton of it. It's not cheap either. It's really fucking expensive. And I was like, this rules. We're back in Tupperware because we were buying the glass containers with the lids. The lids crack. Or, it sucks. So we were like, we're getting Tupperware again. We bought a fuck ton of it. And then like a week later, it was like, Tupperware making a big comeback, files for bankruptcy. And I was like, how fucking dare you? That just spent so much money on Tupperware. And I like it so much now. I don't want it to go away.
You got ahead of the game and you said it's going to last forever. You're all set.
I guess that's true.
Well, that goes to show you should have gone to your local mom and pop Tupperware. Whatever you would call it if you didn't call it Tupperware. I don't know.
I mean, if somebody in my neighborhood was like, do you want to do a Tupperware party? I would be like, come over. Yes, I will make food. This will be amazing.
All right, Joe's next party is a Tupperware party.
Guys, Tupperware party at my house.
We can mix in some Spencer's dildos. It can be a Tupperware and dildos party.
Oh, I love that.
I just so badly wish I could take snippets of like our videos and show a young Joe, modern Joe, all excited about buying Tupperware and how much like he would jump off a bridge that very moment.
I'm gonna be dead when I'm 23. I hate this life. Like, guys, Tupperware's back.
And it's so good again.
It's back in Pog form.
Anyways, Jan leaves this conversation shortly after the Todd call and just basically being like, hey, just nothing's official right now. Like, can you just keep a lid on everything we're talking about? And he's like, no, absolutely. Like, nothing leaves this office. And then immediately we just see clip after clip of like everyone in the office now talking about like, so what exactly is downsizing and things of that nature. And everybody knows within 10 seconds.
So is there like a cut scene where like they all find out like early? Because I don't know how they all know.
I was going to say, is this Michael or is this Pam?
I think it's Pam.
I thought I missed something too.
I think it's Pam too.
It's got to be Pam, yeah.
I think it's Michael because we're seeing everyone in the office talk about it. And then when it cuts to Pam, we see Pam and Jim talking, and they're the only ones not talking about downsizing. They're talking about Angela's cat's birthday party or whatever is going on. So
but Michael brings them all into a meeting to tell them later. So I don't think it was him that let it
and they
slip.
don't know yet.
That's true, I guess.
I don't know if it's editing or if Pam told everyone and Jim just doesn't care enough that he like just it doesn't bother him.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
I just wasn't sure if something went to the cutting room floor, and I don't want to bring up the extended episodes, but I know you all watch those. Anything?
No, I think they like that jump cut of like, hey, nothing ever leaves this office to immediately you seeing everyone talking about it, making it known that it left the office. Like, because then you get that Michael talking head too, where he goes, am I going to tell them? No, I'm not going to tell them. Yeah, I don't see the point of that. As a doctor, would you want to tell your patient that they had cancer?
The fuck?
I don't know though. If they're like, you're gonna get sick, you're gonna know it. Sure. If it was like, you've got some crazy cancer that you're just gonna drop dead in 2 months and you'll never know.
You still have to tell them.
No, you need to
you
know.
still have to tell them that.
I'd rather not know. If it was a non-sick one,
No,
if it
but
was like,
it's
hey,
the
look,
doctor's obligation to tell
Yeah,
you. You can't.
yeah. It's not a matter of do you want to know or not. It's a matter of liability of the doctor.
Also, in that case, if you don't want to know, why did you even go to the doctor?
Exactly.
the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. To me, there would be harm if I found out.
You're going to make me sad.
Well, now if they don't tell you anything, you know something's wrong.
This is a dark topic.
It's getting dark over here.
Well, yeah, but listen, it's a dark subject for sure. But yeah, you're going to get your shit in order. So next, this is when we see Ryan. He's like the new temp, and he walks in for the first time. Ryan's played by BJ Novak, who is one of the writers on the show. I kind of thought this was interesting that this is about like 7 minutes into the episode. This is like start of the second act, and this is when we're introducing a new character. And I feel like in most shows, you know, we've seen the new character, the new office person, the new person in the surroundings. It's like that's how we start an episode, and that's how we meet people through them.
Yeah, it's the first plot point.
Yeah, it's not being done that way. Kind of interesting.
He is introduced, and it's a large ensemble cast, but only a short amount of the actual office is truly introduced in this first episode.
Yeah.
Like Michael, Pam,
Jim, Dwight,
Jim.
and Ryan.
We see some like talking amongst people.
You see
but not
the
very
others,
much.
but you don't get to know them because they actually don't even have their personalities yet.
And we see a lot of people you'll never see again.
Also true, but it's just, to me, it's weird to use him at this part of the episode. You would almost think that they would flip it, and it starts with him coming in for the day and meeting some people because that's how we would have met the people. So, like, that's kind of just how TV typically does it.
He would make more sense in like the Pam role with the, oh, hey, sir, 'cause he's a temp. Hey, you got a fax. Oh, yeah, this is what we do with the fax. Like, and him not sort of knowing if Michael is joking or not, right? Like, I don't know. That makes more sense to me because I don't know exactly what he does.
Well, I'm just thinking more is that device of using a new character to introduce us to a world as well. Because then Michael's performing for him, which in turn he's performing, but Michael will perform for everybody.
Oh, when he shows up though, Michael kicks it up a notch, and that's the point
yeah,
where like
100%.
I'm putting up with Michael until this point. Where
Yep.
he just kicked it into thing after thing after thing after thing, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I like the writing here, though. I like that you get a baseline of what this office is like and what this boss is like, and then that's with somebody new entering in, right? Because you have the camera crew, and then you have somebody else new coming in, and it just heightens, right? So it makes you think, like, what is going to keep happening here every time there's any change,
right?
And then with temp jobs like this is I've never how exactly does that work? So that's
how I got my current position. Was I was a temp. You just kind of go in, and usually you're taking over for somebody because they're leaving either and expected to return, or they're expected
leave
to
or something.
start. Yeah, like in my situation, the person that I eventually ended up replacing left for a different department, and they needed somebody to fill the gap until they could hire somebody. And that was all my role was supposed to be. I just happened to take the role. But that's typically... my wife has done temp roles where she's filled in for people on maternity leave. And there's a set timeline where they come back and you're just doing whatever. You're just a warm body there. No one's expecting you to really do too much, but you're just a warm body. That's all.
Yeah, and it can even be day work too. Like, we need somebody here for a day, and that's it. That's your whole day, and then tomorrow you're somewhere else.
Yep, I've done that as a cook though. That gets interesting because like some days you'll need to be a dishwasher. Some days you're a cook, but they just make you wash dishes. Most of the time, they just make you end up scrubbing the back part of the refrigerator that nobody's gotten to in fucking years.
So when that happens, right? Like in this case, is Ryan a employee of the temp agency or of Dunder Mifflin?
Yeah, the temp agency.
They're the ones who will pay him. But
Right.
because Dunder Mifflin will pay the temp agency who will in turn pay him.
Yeah, so they don't get any insurance, any benefits. They don't get sick time, anything like that. They're just there however many days they're required to be there, and then likely replaced.
Yep.
So he's introducing himself. His name's Ryan Howard. And he goes, oh, like Mo Howard? And he starts doing like his whole nyuk and doing the Three Stooges thing. And then I'm like, so is he not putting two and two together with Ryan Howard, the Philly? But I was looking into this. So Ryan Howard, the year before this comes out, is his like call-up year. So Ryan Howard only had like so many at-bats the year before.
Don't they meet Ryan Howard later?
Later on in the like he goes to like athlete, whatever.
Thing, yeah.
But what's funny is Ryan Howard, real Ryan Howard, this year, 2005, he ends up getting Rookie of the Year. But I mean, that season is starting essentially right when this is coming out. So
yeah,
he's already on the Phillies, but he's not a star player yet. It's kind of like just a really weird coincidence.
As a person who does like baseball, I think of 2005 as the year that I pretty much stopped going to baseball because Red Sox tickets got so fucking expensive in 2005.
Well, we broke the curse already.
2004, our entire lives until 2004, it's like they were giving away tickets. You just go and fucking day of and get $5 tickets. 2005, 10,000 people in pink hats who didn't give a shit to be there. Tickets were $100.
I mean, to be fair, the Red Sox blow right now, and tickets are still expensive.
I was going to say it's still $100. So.
Well, that just became a thing forever at that point. I feel like Red Sox tickets were bad the couple of years before they won the championship too. Once they became like a true contender again, it became a hot ticket in town.
Hey, they made a lot of moves in this offseason. They may be up there again.
Hope so.
So he's doing the whole Three Stooges thing. Pam obviously never cracks a smile at anything he says. He's like, oh, it's the guy thing. And then he's telling Ryan how he's a bit of a student of comedy. And he's like, here, watch this. And that's when he goes and does his Hitler impression.
This is one of the greatest moments of TV ever. He grabs Pam's nameplate to use as the Hitler mustache. Goose steps, starts gibberishing German, then exclaims, I'm Hitler. And then when he thinks people don't know what he's talking about, he has to quantify it with Adolf Hitler. He has to say Adolf. Like they were like, what, Greg Hitler? It's like, oh, right, Adolf Hitler. A fucking amazing performance right here.
You know what's funny? It's not in the version that like Netflix airs or anything. I don't even know if the Peacock version now. But the version we had didn't have it. But originally, like, Dwight raises his hand up, like, with him. But I guess that was, like, since, like, cut off.
I mean, not that we know this, but Dwight does have I think one of the darkest joke in the history of The Office is when Dwight says he wanted to go visit his grandparents and his visa was denied by the Showa Foundation. Like, I can't believe that joke made it onto a network TV show. That is so fucking dark and racist.
I don't get it.
The Showa Foundation is the foundation that's basically anti-Semitism and trying to hunt down old Nazis who were like escaped, right? So like Dwight's like, I'm going to Argentina to go find my grandfather, but my visa was denied by the Showa Foundation, meaning they knew his grandfather was a Nazi and they weren't going to go let him visit him. I think that came about after, I think Spielberg might have a part of that. It may be something that came out after Schindler's List.
It's kind of, I mean, Hitler has this forever, like the number one worst dude of all time.
I mean, he's earned it.
Well, look, obviously, I'm not saying otherwise, but I'm like, there's like for all the
he wasn't that bad. He had some good ideas, Jay. Okay, calm down, buddy. I don't know.
Defend Hitler.
What I'm saying is, when you think of all the other people in the world who have done heinous things,
I had fun
there's no one who's like as untouchable, like number one, like Hitler, like where his name looms so much higher than the rest.
Yeah.
I think before him, like, there was other Hitlers, and, like, they all had to change their name.
I always wondered that. Like, I wonder how many Hitlers have had to change their name, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but, like, I think of, like, the, like, you know, Bin Ladens and the, you know, Saddam Husseins of the world, and, like, they're not as, like, every little thing about them is so defined as what, you know, Hitler is as far as appearance and mannerisms. And
when you have Walt Disney shitting on you and like Donald Duck, you know you're bad.
Yeah, well, Walt Disney, I think, wasn't really shitting on him.
Right. But I want to know is how come Michael didn't play Hitler's harmonica?
Because it's Hitler's harmonica. Guys, group field trip to the Barbie Museum.
I watched a reel the other day about a doctor in Ohio who was a descendant of Hitler that was gay
Lord Hitler.
His name was Gay Hitler.
I love how wildly different our fucking algorithms are that you got that.
I got that too.
That's 2 out of 5, but you two share the same type of videos back and forth. Nick, did you get that? It would make sense if Nick got it.
It also doesn't help that Ferg and I will share them with each other.
We send each other videos all day.
So there's a point here where we see Jim on the phone, and then like Dwight is like shoving all the shit off of his desk back onto Jim's. And I know like Dwight is the one who's perceived to be the one that's like the annoying one.
No, Jim's wrong.
But yeah, I was on Dwight's side on this one.
Yeah.
It's your space. Yeah, he's invading into his, speaking of Hitler, he's invading into his space.
Like Jim's like annoyed looking at him like, what? Like, I'm not even like on your desk. And I'm thinking, yes, you fucking are. Like, you are completely in all over his shit. If your shit was all over my desk, I'd be just as pissed. I
feel so lucky that I had desk clumps in different jobs and stuff before. I never had anybody I didn't like. That's a huge bonus, right? Because you're so close to people all day long. Like, this shit could happen. I had one guy give me the Iggy once because he thought there was a kid getting fired and he thought the kid was going to shoot up the office, and he gave me the like, let's go have a cigarette. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, I'm pretty sure the kid's going to shoot people. I don't want to see you go down. And I was like, you, my friend, are a good man. Thank you for taking me outside.
What's the Iggy?
You give them the Iggy. You're like, hey, let's go. You give somebody like the
use the definition in the word.
Yeah. Like
you give somebody a notification. Hey, let's go. We're doing something. You give them a heads up.
I've never heard Iggy use that.
Neither
word
have
either.
I. Must be a main thing.
Probably a wheat from the chap kind of thing.
It's probably amazing. I've lived here for like 2 years. Oh, you give him the Iggy, you see? Just evolving.
You were like part Maine, part old-timey just now.
Both of those make sense. I'm looking this up because I know I'm not wrong.
To go back to what you said, Jay, I know Nick also hates Jim. I can't fucking stand Jim throughout this whole series.
No, I don't hate Jim. And if we're going to go outside of the episode for a second, the more I watched this show, so when you first get into it, like you're really enveloped in like the Pam and Jim storyline, right? And it's something you want to see happen. And now like when you rewatch it as much as we have, you just kind of see Jim for just like a bully. Right? Like he's just kind of a dick. And it's not to say that Dwight doesn't deserve some of it, But I mean, I don't know. I feel like Jim like really goes out of his way to just like be a dick more times than not. And it's so like later in this, like later in like 3 and 4 or 5, like they make
9.
it kind of hard to enjoy Jim without, also thinking that he's an asshole.
Oh, well, like when he throws the snowballs and stuff at him.
Well, that's an episode where Jim gets his comeuppance, yeah.
And he deserves every
That's
fucking
my
second
favorite
of it,
episode for that reason. He breaks Jim. He finally wins against
So here's the thing, and I don't want to get too far ahead because we have so much more to talk about. But I'll say one thing in regards to that, though, is one of the things of the show, right, is always going to be Jim pranking Dwight and stuff like that. The thing is, as time goes on, Dwight becomes a slightly more endearing character as you learn more about him versus here. You know what I mean?
Well, to be fair, like from somebody who's seen like literally I can count on one hand episodes, nobody in this episode is likable at all.
How'd you know the snowman thing, by the way?
I've seen it.
That was not the other episode you named that you said you watched.
I can see him seeing that on like Instagram Reel or something, though.
I've seen that clip somewhere. I may have walked in when my wife and I were first dating. She liked the show. But as far as this episode, nobody is likable. Like, not a single person.
I think Ryan's pretty likable in this episode.
I think at this point, Jim and Pam are likable.
Like, I don't even know to really hate Jim yet at this point.
What is unlikable about Pam, though? She's a person who has a job who gets shit on.
He's a tattletale. He tells on Michael in the meeting.
Yeah, but Michael's a shithead.
It's not that. All of them but Michael are kind of devoid of personality.
It's an office, and everyone turns it down a little bit when they're at work.
You die a little inside every time you go to work.
Yeah, also true. I want to touch up on this just because it coincides. After that whole thing with the desk space issue, Jim now decides he's going to build a fence out of pencils.
I don't know why it's so funny to me that he sharpened all the pencils. Like, because they don't come sharpened. He went out of his way to sharpen them like pointy, like castle defense. But
I understand dividing the two desks with them, but why did he put them all over his own phone and stuff too? Because it was like,
yeah, he had them. I think he was just kind of setting
like
it
those
up.
bird things that they put on the edge of like buildings, so the birds.
Oh, like in hospitals and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has all those up now. And I don't know why it was so satisfying, but when Dwight sees it, he's like, "Oh, you can't do that." He's like, "Why not?" He's like, "Safety violation. I could fall and pierce an organ." And then he grabs his
headset
phone,
to his phone,
and he just uses his phone like knock them all down like whack-a-mole. And there's something about it that was like so satisfying.
It was, yeah.
And as he's like knocking them down, Jim like turns to the camera and he goes, like, this is why the whole downsizing thing just doesn't really bother me. And then Dwight's like, downsizing? And you get his talking head who's like, I have no problem with that. I've been recommending downsizing since I first got here. I even brought it up in my interview.
So if he knows about the downsizing, maybe it was Pam that blabbed. Maybe
Definitely
it would have to be. Yeah.
Pam told him, and he told other people.
I think it was Pam, and Jim just is so I don't give a shit about this job that he didn't like register enough with him to want to go talk to everybody else about it.
In fairness, if you're Pam, why wouldn't you tell everyone? Like, these are your friends and coworkers. Like, hey, we might all be losing our jobs.
The boss also called you cute and made a mrrr at you.
About you 2 years ago.
Said she used to be cute.
Yeah.
Even worse. So you're no longer attractive and sexually
He didn't
harassed
say
you.
she's not cute. He said, if you think she's cute, you should have seen her a couple of years ago. Or whatever.
She's less cute.
Either way, there's motivation.
And Jim's clearly her best friend in the office, so she's going to go tell him right after that meeting what just happened.
So in the next scene, we have Michael over at Pam's desk, and she's trying to get him to do some work, basically, and going over some old messages he has. And he's like, "Oh, should I go run over and do it right now?" And he does his Steve Austin impression, not Stone Cold Steve Austin,
$6 million man.
the $6 million man, not the $1 million man, but the $6 million man, and does a I never watched the $6 million man.
I used to watch it on TV Land.
Yeah, me too.
I remember not enjoying it. I don't know if maybe
intro.
it was just, I just remember it being not great. I've seen a few episodes of it, but it was a long time ago. Maybe I saw a bad episode.
Man, remember when $6 million was a lot?
You can use my groceries.
Way more than I have. It's a lot.
I mean, yeah, I'll take it.
But the intro, I think, is the thing that lives on for that show. Like, we can rebuild him. We can make him stronger.
The technology.
Right,
we have the technology. That's all I remember from it.
And I remember his boss because he's in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. Steve Carell has the action figure of his boss.
Yeah, just boss. They make fun of him. Yeah.
So he's talking to Pam. He's like, that'd be a great salary for me, right? $6 million? He's like, send a memo to Jam that I deserve a raise. And she goes, don't we all? And he goes, I'm sorry? It's nothing. And then he's like very like serious faced and goes, if you're unhappy with your compensation, maybe you should take it up with HR. Okay, not today, Pam.
I do love this, though, because it's like the most middle manager shit ever. Where like you go to your boss and you're like, I want a raise. It's like, that's not me. That's above me. Like just completely brushes it off. I hated this for his character
because I thought like, here's a guy who's joking and performing at all times. And then like you also see this thing where like she's like nervous to say things in front of him and he's like being a dick. And it's like, well, where's this guy? Like, where's the goofy guy?
I kept expecting him to turn around going, I'm just kidding, Pam. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, and like I didn't like the taste of like him just ending on that note. You know what I mean? It just didn't fit the guy I'm watching this whole episode.
I think honestly, if he just said not today, Pam, it would have worked because it would have just been like, this has been weird with the downsizing. Like, let's not talk about money. But he is mean and pushes it off of himself.
Yeah, it's the meanness that like, it just throws you off because it's just not what we're seeing this whole time. This is a guy that we're just seeing, especially with the other guys, like so desperately wants to be included in jokes and part of things and liked by everyone. And he wants everyone to think that he's funny. And then here he's just like, she's just like, don't we all deserve a raise? And like, he's just kind of an asshole to her for no reason.
Yeah.
Now you have Michael saying that he thinks that he's a bit of a role model there and that he garners people's respect. And then he goes, attention all Dunder Mifflin employees, please. We have a meeting in the conference room ASAP. And then you get the talking head where he's talking about, some heroes of mine. His hero list, Bob Hope, Abraham Lincoln, Bono, and God. That's his Mount Rushmore.
Take Bono out of that and you're good.
Well, you don't have to take Bono out of it. You just said God right after, right? So you only named 3 people.
God never put his shitty album on my iPod. Fuck you, Bono.
I was telling my wife about that yesterday. We were having that. And she's like, it wasn't a big deal. Everybody does it now.
No, it was a big deal. It really upset me.
It was a big deal, and I still hate you two to this day.
All right, you know what's funny though? Do you hate the fact that happened, or do you hate the artist that did it, or that it happened with?
Both.
Little column A, little column B.
Because I'll give you another example of somebody who did that to you. Yeah, and
oh, that's right, Joe Mama.
Can I have the example, please?
Weezer put it all on all copies of Windows 98.
95.
95, sorry.
Windows 95. And that was different. That was actually, Windows did that to show you their video technology. To be like, look, you can put videos on your computer.
I know.
I was also there before I bought the computer. They didn't break into my computer and add it.
Yeah, one day I had to go to work, so I plugged in my iPod and went to bed, and I woke up and it was like, would you like to listen to U2? And I was so fucking mad because the answer has been my entire life, no, I fucking don't.
But so was it, it wasn't deletable?
No,
it was stuck in your iTunes playlist.
I connected my iTunes, which I haven't touched in years, but it was off of my iPod last time I had an iPod, to my smart TV, and it pulled up everything I've ever bought or downloaded from iTunes years and years ago. And then where was the fucking the fucking U2 album was still there.
That's the part I think is weird. I think otherwise it's like people made a huge deal, but like, all right, a free album from a band that is worldly very popular. Like a lot of people were probably really excited about it, but being stuck with it is weird.
Yeah.
So in today's dystopian kind of hellscape of tech and technology, it probably wouldn't be that weird. But back then, that was like the first time that people did that.
Also, remember, too, you only had as much space on your iPod as you had. So one album being on there that you didn't want meant one album you did want on there couldn't fit. So that's real fucking shitty.
You know what's funny is I went to pick up some food last night from this Italian place. the music playing was just one of those old Bose systems with the old iPod mini dock on it.
Oh,
I was
dock.
like, huh, holy shit, they still rock the iPod in this place. It's just like your typical like Italian restaurant music playing on loop. But I just thought it was cool to see an iPod in the wild still.
I know my old iPod is somewhere in this house. I don't know where, but I know it still works. Well, last I tried, which is
I
years
found
ago,
mine the
still
other
turned
day.
on.
It's in my underwear drawer. I was just on the bottom when I was putting.
I'm glad you
away. I
said
was
drawer. It's just in my
like, it's in my underwear.
He has that underwear Gordo has with the pockets.
Don't knock it till you tried it.
Yeah.
You know what? Everybody get me your underwear size. I'll go find them on Amazon, and then I'll show you guys. I'll buy you guys a pair, and then you guys will see the power of the underwear pocket.
Gordo definitely bought those
I'm a
like
size
porn
large.
underwear.
I'll take free underwear.
Well, Gordo bought the weird porn underwear where it's like, I put this little vibrating thing in there, and then I go to the mall, and my boyfriend gets to play with it. Like, that's what Gordo has, and he just puts other shit in it for some reason. Like, doesn't realize it's a sexual aid.
It came with a free ball gag.
It has
He found
a
it
guy
Spencer's.
hiking in the woods with his phone in his underwear to show that you don't need pants.
Yeah, that situation we're all in. We're hiking in the woods, and you're like, don't I hate pants right now?
I just don't walk around in my underwear very often.
Yeah, but
Especially
the time
not
that
in the
you
woods.
do, you would have a pocket to put your phone in instead of putting your phone against your butt in the elastic band.
You put it against your butt?
Yeah. If I carry it and I need my hands free, I put it in my elastic.
How often are you walking around in your underwear with your phone, and then you need both hands? What is your life?
What are you doing? Put on gym shorts, dude. Like, what?
Listen, sometimes it's just not
Meanwhile,
feasible.
You have your phone up against your dirty ass, and then you play with it all day because you don't feel like putting it down or putting on gym shorts with pockets.
Yeah, what are you doing when you need to pee that you need your phone?
You never know.
Maybe the thing from Ghoulies is gonna come up from the toilet.
To take his phone, then spit it back up like, I don't want this to touch your ass.
Fuck you, Ghoulie.
Even the ghoulie doesn't want your phone, Gordo. What are you doing wrong with your life right now?
Gordo's phone must fucking stink, dude.
It goes on the ass skin, not the ass crack. It's not like I suitcase it.
You're gonna get pink eye.
Gordo's just preparing for prison somehow. It's I'll sneak a phone in.
That's why you have so many ear problems, because you're getting caca in your ears.
Pink ear.
No, that's just my bad ears. It's a disability. Thank you.
What do you say to your son about your disability? You try to train him to know, to be sensitive to disabilities.
It's my dogter, first of all.
Sorry.
Anyways, we get everyone in the conference room. One of the first things that happens is Dwight stands up to kind of like, stand besides the manager for this, because this is the first time we hear it. I know it's the running joke throughout the series and a classic thing, but right here, episode 1, we hear it, and it's done so well. I'm assistant regional manager, like I should know first. And he goes, assistant to the regional manager. And I just think that it's like,
That's not the first time. He says it to Ryan.
No, you meet Ryan after.
Oh,
Yeah.
we haven't met Ryan yet?
we've met Ryan, but he hasn't gotten toured around people yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My
How
bad.
dare you? Fuck you. Anyways, when it happens here, though, it's just something about like when you look at this line and how like legitimately clever it is, what realistically that means, like how polar different of a job that is, and just that slight wordplay. It's just, I know that becomes such a giant joke throughout The Office and Dwight's character. Right off the bat, hearing it, it's one of the smarter jokes that I think has ever been written on television.
I feel like this must have been a writer's room thing of they're like, this will land and we can get so much mileage out of it. And they were so right. I wonder which writer thought of this joke, because it's
just so smart.
fucking great.
It's very relatable, too, I will say that, because there's always that, like, office kiss-ass that thinks they're the boss, and they're really not.
And basically this whole conference room thing is him letting everyone know the situation about potential downsizing and that, it can be between them and the Stanford branch going down. And basically him just trying to assure everyone that, like, he won't let that happen. But they're trying to let him know there's no way that he can ensure that.
You get a very awake Stanley.
This is maybe the widest-eyed Stanley not yelling we've ever seen. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, he's actually very sick in this, and you can see him holding a bottle of Pedialyte.
Like the actor was sick?
Yeah, he was like he had like the flu or something, and I think he like almost wasn't able to do it or something like that, but came around. And
also, another actor who got hair plugs but got them way later, where like you see Stanley now and you're like, why do you look so different? Oh my God, you have way more hair than you did? That's so strange.
Vacation Stanley. Florida Stanley.
Yeah, Florida Stanley did it. Did I say anything about Messina?
The other thing with Stanley, by the way, is when he's asking Michael about how can you be so sure, and talking about like, well, they'd be messing with my family, and I'm the head of this family, so you ain't gonna be messing with my chillin'. And like you just see Stanley just staring daggers at him, like, what the fuck did you just say?
Michael affects a stereotypical voice here, and Steve Carell does such a good job
Stanley
of
also
saying it.
is like the only black man in The Office, by the way, like for the one of you who may not have seen The Office before.
They do a lot of the show, like I said, there's a lot of awkward pauses and a lot of sort of just like camera hanging on somebody. Michael realizes immediately after he says it that he shouldn't have said it, and it's one of Steve Carell's best like non-speaking moments of the entire episode. He just says it and goes like, fuck.
You cut to this Jim talking head. He goes, if I left, what would I do with all this useless information in my head? Tonnage price, manila folders, Pam's favorite flavor of yogurt, which is mixed berry. And then you get that quick cut to him just like, first, it's kind of creepy because there's this shot of her eating yogurt and him looking at her. But then it cuts to her talking head. She goes, he said it was mixed berries? Oh, he got me.
Yeah, she's like, he's on to me, and you realize that there's chemistry there.
There's big chemistry.
Yeah, this is like the first time not the first time.
No.
You see them joking around, but you see because there was a talking head she had earlier where, she was talking about her watercolors and how Jim thinks they're nice. And like, you can see how they are, at the very least, help get one another through the workday.
You think the person asking her the question is that piece of shit sound guy?
Brian?
It might be.
Maybe.
The guy who likes doors that go like this.
Trace Comas.
Now we're going to cut to Michael, who's touring Ryan around the office. And this is, again, how I would have imagined the episode starting. I feel like you could recut this episode in a different order in a way that almost flows better. So now he's bringing him to Dwight first. He's like, Dwight, be, polite, introduce yourself. It's like, oh, tell him about the kung fu in the car and everything like that. And he tells him about the car that he's like fixing up. It's weird because this is such a different lane for this character from what we're seeing beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't picture him as like a muscle car guy.
Yeah, like fixes it up himself and stuff like that. We see so much more in the future, but just like episode 1, this is a complex character.
He says here too that he bought a 78 280Z for $1,200, fixed it up. Now it's worth $3,000, which I think is a very funny joke that he's less than $2,000 above what he bought it for. But I looked up, can I find a 78 280Z around me? You can find one for sale that's a total like clunker for like $2,000, but all the ones near
it's a
me,
Datsun. They're like renowned awful cars.
Right? But I found one that was like totally redone to factory, everything looked beautiful, $23,000. But a couple miles from my house. So if you guys want to go pretend that we're interested in buying it and drive around and drive Dwight's car for like 5 minutes, it'd be kind of fun.
There's a 1977 for $66,000.
That's got to be something
Joe
going
Steele is
on.
better.
Yeah. just drive to Maine and grab that one.
And even then, that feels like way too much fucking money for a car from 78.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's in
that
Illinois.
You're going to slide on the ice and crash, and it's going to shatter because it's made out of fiberglass. And it's got 1978 safety protocols in it. No, thank you. My car now is just like, you're not in the lane right, you're not in the lane right. And I'm like, ooh, I can't even imagine a car that didn't do something like that.
Imagine not having a backup camera.
That car just smells like 50 years of cigarettes.
I don't have a backup camera, actually. My car is a 2016. They became standard in 2017.
Oh.
Backup cameras?
My wife never looks at the backup camera. She full on turns back, and she is such a better driver than me.
I'm the
I'm
same way.
staring at that backup
I don't
camera,
trust
being
him.
like,
Yeah.
I think I'm
Me
straight.
neither. I don't
straight.
trust my backup camera.
I use
like it
mine
around.
to park now. I'm used to using it, but I feel like I was once very good at parallel parking. Like that was something, like one thing about my driving I was very proud about. I was very good about it. And now I don't know how I would be now that I'm so used to using the camera.
I'm the king of parallel parking. That's all I do.
We drove into Portland this weekend to have like lunch and like a walk around or whatever. And I was like looking at all the spots I could parallel park, and the side street I was on, it was like, or a parking lot for $26. And I was like, yes, sir. Swipe my credit card. Not even gonna try.
I would have done the same thing.
Why risk it? If you could just get in a parking lot, you'd be in the city all day anyway.
It would be less, for me, it would be less about having to parallel park, which I'm pretty good at parallel parking, honestly. Like, that doesn't bother me. But I would just like the safety of the parking lot over, just being on the street.
Less likely a WB Mason truck is going to ram into you. Yeah. Or like a bike messenger is going to not be paying attention. And yeah, there's too much going on. Or you're not going to be paying attention into a bike messenger.
I want to bring this back a little bit. Dwight's talking about the car he fixed up. He's like, oh, I got some pictures of it if you want to see. And he goes into his drawer to grab the pictures. And that's when he goes, damn it, Jim. And he pulls out, he's like, he put my stuff in Jello again. And you just see his stapler. It's inside of a giant, like, yellow thing of Jello.
It's a good mold, too. He's good at molding.
One of the most famous jokes from the show and the British one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the best thing, too, I think the joke from the British and the US version is when Jim says, how do you know it was me while eating Jello? It's such a great fucking little joke.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, again, it's just so clever. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a dumb prank, but like, it's like, oh man, that would work, wouldn't it?
And Michael tells him he has to eat it out because the starving children.
And then he catches himself saying that that's funny and realizing that he can't say that starving children is funny. Like, this is a real good performance scene.
Why do you have to pick like gross yellow Jello though?
I think it shows
see-through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially with the bright lights on the set.
You can get clear Jello, which is probably by far the worst type of Jello.
Yeah, flavorless Jello.
To gelatin. It's just gelatin at that point.
It's just horse bones at that point. Yeah. Like, why am I eating flavorless horse bones for dinner? Guys, I made vodka shots into horse bone flavored Jello. I call him Mr. Eds.
So when Dwight's freaking out about it, and he's telling Michael, like, yeah, you have to tell him to cut this out. And Jim's like, all right, Dwight, I'm sorry. I've always been your biggest fan. Everyone starts laughing. When Ryan does you should have put him in custody. And now, like, Michael's, like, elated now. Because, like, this kid's joking, too. Yeah. And this is probably, like, the Office joke I quote the most on this show is when Michael wants so desperately to be part of the joke and can't figure out anything to add and just starts going, pudding.
Listener Jeff, we said this to each other maybe 10,000 times. It's the perfect icebreaker when they're in an awkward situation. Just go pudding.
It's easily like the amount of times I've used it on episodes here. It's just, he's been waiting for this moment forever for a bunch of the guys to all just jump on a joke like ready. This. And he just can't fucking think of something.
It's Steve Carell's performance, too, because the smile, like the childlike look on his face, and he's like, I'm trying to think of another joke. It is so fucking perfect. Just the littlest smile. He's just reverted back to childhood.
The funny thing is, pudding, you can do a bunch of jokes very easily with.
If he's looking for a pun.
Yeah. All right, Dwight, once you're done putting that down.
Bad.
It's a fucking pun with pudding while he's holding up Jello.
You think he'd revert to Cosby and that gets darker.
Not yet.
Oh, I guess at this point too, if Michael was like, we're in the morning, you'd be like, oh, that's funny. We love Heathcliff Huxtable. We had no idea he was one of society's greatest monsters yet.
So next shot we see like that spy shot of Jim at Pam's desk again. Like you can see it's like from afar because it's like shit in the way a little bit. He's talking to her about hey, do you ever like going out at the end of the week for a drink? She's like, yeah. It's like, well, some of us are going to go out tonight. Like, you should come out. It's like, okay, yeah. And then as they're having that conversation, you see someone walk in and like Jim instantly kind of like stands up more straight, because he was leaned over before. And we find out that that's Pam's fiance, Roy.
We just assume when he walks into the serial killer because he's dragging the limbs of a dead body in a fucking trash bag behind him.
Yeah.
I'll say it's one of those things where, the reveal here, it's not uncommon for television, but the chemistry with Jim and Pam and like the cuteness of the two of them earlier in the episode is so strong that I felt like this does catch you off guard. Like, you know,
this makes Pam seem bad.
Yeah, because Jim is single and flirting. Pam is engaged in flirting.
Because Pam is very, very clearly flirting. Like it can't. It's not.
Pam's sitting at the desk she's stuck at. This guy's coming over to her desk and flirting with her.
And there is an element of like their relationship helps get the day go by. Like they like to joke around. And as much as like, obviously you could tell I think deep down she does like Jim with the, oh my God, like he said my favorite flavor is mixed berry. And Jim thinks my watercolor is nice. You don't see them flirting in a way that's like real flirting. You know what I mean?
Let me put it to you this way.
Like, you know, when you hear like you were emotionally cheating, like they're not doing anything like that you could get upset over, you know?
No, they're friends that happen to be a boy and a girl.
If your girlfriend was Pam and, you know, real life, you watched this first episode, how would you feel about Pam and Jim's chemistry?
I understand that, but I'm saying put yourself in the situation now. Now you're Roy. Try to yell at her about anything that you just saw happen.
Well, yeah, just that for sure. I'm saying
he knows what yogurt you like.
I'm saying from the viewer's perspective, it makes Pam seem kind of, you know.
I think it is innocent here. Like, I think they're showing us a million signs of why we as the viewer would want to see them together and that they probably do like one another. But I'll say he's not crossing the line. He's not touching her. He's not doing. You see this stuff at work. You see it all the time. Like, you see people, Lord knows, like, over the years, I've seen a lot of people do things they shouldn't do and act in ways they probably shouldn't, you know? But this seemed very innocent.
I feel like he is crossing the line when he's asking her out to drinks with everyone.
But it's with everybody. The whole office is going.
Yeah, was that real, though? Because at the end, when she walks out, he's by himself. Was that a trick to get her to go out?
We'll talk about that in a little while. I do think genuinely, yes, do I think he likes her? 100%. But I don't see him at this point crossing the line. But just to circle it back to what I was saying earlier, for Roy to come in, us as the viewer, take away the fact that you've seen this episode 20 times before. Or Gordo, you're watching this for the first time.
Yep.
Did this come unexpected that turns out she has a boyfriend?
No, not at all.
Liar.
Why? Why did you expect her to have a boyfriend?
Why wouldn't she?
I mean, to Gordo's point, she's just a normal, pretty girl. You wouldn't be expecting or not expecting. I think you can go 50-50 on that.
Well, because I think we're watching a will they, won't they develop in front of us.
But they don't give you any indication that she is single. Just because she's flirting with somebody does not mean that she is single. That's not indicative
right, but they also intentionally don't give you any indication that she's not.
She's also a very shy girl, so I would think that maybe she'd be afraid to pursue a man.
I don't think she has to pursue.
I like the way Ferg said that. Was like it was from a 90s hip hop song. It would be so happy. She got a man.
What's your man got to do with me? I'm not trying to hear that, see? I think I've brought this up on an episode before. That song, that dude plays both parts. He plays the guy and the girl. They modify his voice for the girl parts. And I only found that out like a year ago, and it fucking blew my mind.
Well, I just found it out, so boom. Yeah. You just blew my mind, sir.
You watched 2% of the things I said.
Could you try to send me things about Coldplay?
Just watch the Coldplay video. Just watch it.
I'm with Ferg. I still have not watched the Coldplay video.
I haven't watched it either.
I still haven't seen it either. But I didn't need to see it to get my crossword. You talked about it so much.
It is the most beautiful tribute to Dick Van Dyke. In respects to the man, just watch it.
I love Dick Van Dyke. I hate Coldplay. Why would I do that?
I'll just watch Mary Poppins.
Because you watch it one time. It's one time.
But then I have to hear a Coldplay song one time, and I only have so many minutes in my life.
The things that you've watched.
Coldplay and YouTube in one episode. You two in one episode.
The worst music ever created.
I got something. How many fart videos do you watch that I send?
different.
No, it's not different.
That's not different. Look, I'm with you on this one, Gordo. I won't watch any of those videos you send either, but I think it's the same thing.
Things you're interested in versus things you're not.
Yeah. I'm not over here crying about the fart video.
Gordo, I think technically he's watched one fart video because he watched Coldplay, and I think that counts as the same thing.
You guys are all Dick Van Dyke fans, though.
Yeah.
So you're saying if Gordo sent you a video and it was Dick Van Dyke and it had fart noises on it, would you watch it?
Because guess what? Now I know I have a video project to do. We're going to put this to the test.
Farting Dick Van Dyke, Jay, would you watch it?
Yeah, would you?
The episode's editing is going to be a day late this week because Gordo is creating this video, spending an entire day.
You're not going to get the episode until late Wednesday now because he's going to be editing his fart Dick Van Dyke video.
All right, well, moving forward, because I think we got to finish this episode. But to go back to this here.
A loving tribute.
So.
A loving tribute to Dick Van Dyke.
So Roy shows up. You know, him and Jim say hey to one another.
And you know what? She's a bitch for leaving them alone together because she knows that's awkward.
Well,
I mean, she's going to do her job. I don't think she's being a bitch. I think she's like, I have work
Before
to
that,
do.
we find out through a talking head, though, that they've been engaged for 3 years now. They're supposed to get married in September, and then, you know, whatever happened, and now it's looking like the spring. It cuts back, and she's like, hey, do you mind if I go for a drink with these guys? And he's like, no. No, come on, let's get out of here. Which kind of like, I'll tell you, something about that was like unsettling in a way. The way he was just like, tells her like, no, you're not allowed. Like, that was a little weird.
There's no reasons. If he was like, I'm tired, do you mind if we just go home?
The fact that she asked is really dated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I can't imagine a situation in my own life where that would happen. Like, hey, do you mind if I go? It would just be, I'm going to get drinks with some people.
Yep.
Yeah.
See ya. Like,
Do you want to come?
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Okay, I'll see you at home.
Yep.
And then she's like, oh, well, you know, I still have to get my faxes done. So like, hold on. So she runs off because she has to get her work done before she can leave with them. And now it's just the two of them standing at the desk. It's so much uncomfortable silence that it feels like super awkward.
You can cut that tension with a knife, dude.
Yeah.
And Jim's like, no, you know what? You should come. You know, like we're all going to go out. It'd be good to see what people like us. He's like, no, dude, you know, it sounds good, but like we got to go. He's like, yeah. And they get silent again. And then Jim finally goes, so what's in the bag? And then and Roy won't answer it. He just goes, just tell her I'll talk to her later. And he like heads down.
Such a douchey thing.
I'm like, what the fuck's in this bag?
It's like a Roy Dexter scenario.
He had to have stole something from the warehouse, right?
I have no idea. I don't know what could be in that bag.
It had to be he stole something that he can't like let Michael see it.
I would like to think though, even in 2005, you'd have to find a real good hiding space to be able to steal something from your office and then walk around with it in a bag in broad daylight and not be found out.
Yeah.
That said though, I worked for a tech company once. This is like 15 years ago that like sold like refurbished computers. A kid who was a temp actually came in one night, had a key pass, stole a bunch of computers, was on camera. It was like he looked at the camera and was like, they were like, okay, well, like you're arrested. And then like somebody from that company just never showed up at the court date. And that dude got off for free and got all the computers. It was like, guys, this is like the worst management of all time.
I like after that scene, you get the talking head from Jim and he's answering the question, do you think you'll be invited to the wedding? And he's just like, I think I'll be invited to the wedding. And he just scratches his head. And it's just like, I think really showcased how much he likes her and how it's like almost acknowledged without being spoken, you know?
He definitely would have been invited because in this world, you invite all your coworkers to your wedding.
Which is insane. Yeah.
Oh, my, yeah.
I got married. I invited even like, unless you were a coworker who we're friends with on the outside world, weddings are so expensive. Every person who's coming is an expense to that wedding.
Yeah.
So everybody you're inviting is going to be somebody who you really are friends with because otherwise it's just costing you more money.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of money.
I'm not sure all of you would make my cut.
You all didn't make my cut.
You all made mine, so fuck you, Nick, and fuck you, Gordo.
It was COVID. No one was allowed.
I was going to say,
like two
it turned out
people.
way
Gordo's is
cheaper
separate.
from us
Gordo
than
did different.
Gordo's essential call. I remember when Gordo first got engaged and he like called me to let me know. And he's like, oh, so the plan right now is we're probably gonna have 2 weddings, one in each country. And like in my head, I just like, the money is just like tracking over. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna cost.
Is my passport up to date? Yeah.
That was the original plan, was we were gonna have one here and one there. But
in all fairness, I watched your entire wedding streamed.
Yeah, I believe you encouraged my wife to dab.
Doesn't sound like me.
He was active, I think, in the chat.
I could see it.
That seems like something that you added later in post, Gordo.
So now we have Michael talking to Ryan in his office, and he's like talking to him a little bit. So now you have a little bit more of a vibe for the place, and we'll work hard, play hard. He's like, I have an idea for this prank, basically. And he's asking him, like, are you into like the Jamie Kennedy experiment and punk stuff like that? And he's like, oh yeah. Which is funny because BJ Novak was on Punk'd before this show.
Also, just real quick, history has remembered Punk'd very well and not the Jamie Kennedy experiment very well. That is not something people bring up very often.
Yeah.
Punk'd was a bigger show even in its moment, though.
I mean, it was on MTV when people watched MTV.
Well, that's because Jamie Kennedy made The Mask too, and it made the world hate him.
I never saw it.
It's really bad.
Very, very bad.
Although it's not as bad as Son of the Mask, Mask 3, which is definitely worse than The Mask 2.
No, that's what I was talking about, The Mask 2. There is... The Son of the Mask is The Mask 2.
Oh, is that Mask 2?
Yeah.
It blurs.
Michael's pulling this prank. He's like, all right, I just need you to play along. So they're sitting there. Pam walks in. He has her sit down. And he's talking to her about, like, with the downsizing and everything, like, you've made this a lot easier because you're actually going to have to be the first person that we let go. And she's like, what? Why? Like, stealing. Like, what stealing? What do you think I stole? Post-it notes? Post-it notes? What are those, like 50 cents? Well, yeah, but if you steal 1,000 Post-it notes, and tell her how it adds up. She's like, I can't believe this. Like, I've never stolen so much as a paperclip, and you're firing me?
It would now be $800 would be the way the math works out with inflation. So you'd get fired for stealing $100.
Yeah, I mean, it's enough. And he's telling her, too, like, the thing is, because it's for misconduct, she won't get any severance pay. He's like, just, clean out your desk. I'm sorry.
He's trying so hard not to laugh while he's saying it, too, which makes him even more fucking evil.
But then you pan around, and you now see her, like, hands on her face, just, like, sobbing. And he's like, and it's quiet for a second. He goes, you've been X'd, punk.
That is maybe the funniest thing he says in the entire episode.
And he's telling surprise, it was a joke. I was joking. And he goes, he was my accomplice. And he like points to Ryan. And this is another like subtle, but one of my favorite parts of the episode. Camera slowly pans over to Ryan. And you just see his head down, like shaking his head no. Like, it's like one of those like just small moments that's like so perfectly done.
Question that came across my mind watching this was, if you were Ryan in this lowly temp position, would you still be sticking around at this point?
Oh, absolutely not. This would be a one and done day.
Yeah, because you could just go to your temp agency and be like, it's fucking crazy there. It's so awkward.
Yep.
They put me in a weird position. Can you move me to any other office?
Yep. I would just say the guy's a psychopath.
That said, though, with we're not supposed to talk about the future of this show, but knowing Ryan's character and that he is ultimately the biggest villain of this entire show, it does make sense for his personality to be maybe enjoying this a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Pam calls him a jerk. He goes, well, I don't know about that. And then she leaves and it's awkward for a minute. And I just I don't know. I didn't love Michael's reaction. I could see him making this is a poor taste joke and doing the prank and her crying. I just feel like that character, like, for him to just be like, we're joking, like, get over it. Like, once she started crying, I felt like he should have at least felt more awkward about it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe him awkwardly try to put his arm around her or just do something.
This isn't the Michael you know and love. This is Brett.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, I'm saying
that's exactly it. Yeah.
I'm saying take that out of it. I'm saying this is where this character is flawed. And I mean, yes, with the benefit of hindsight, obviously we see where the character develops and how he does treat it differently. But yeah, here in this guy who's just like, because we're seeing the element of it, like I said before, we see this guy who so desperately wants everyone to think he's funny and to, he calls them his family at one point. So like, but he does this shit that's like, why are you being a dick the whole time? Like, You already made this girl feel uncomfortable earlier with the raise thing, and now you're doing this. You're torturing this girl, like, and she's not outspoken. She doesn't do anything to you. Like, what is this?
This is like a solid 20-second awkward silent pause too, which is pretty crazy.
It is
like
very drawn out.
This episode would be a standard 22-minute episode if it didn't have this pause in it at the very end. Like, because you're watching the clock as you're going through, right? You're like, why is this a minute longer? I'm trying to think of what it is. And like, it's these little things. You're like, this episode is a minute longer than most pilots and sitcom shows because they spend so much time on how fucking uncomfortably silent it is in this scenario.
I hated this. I hated it. It was just really in bad taste. Did not make me like him anymore.
You are forcing your hate.
Yeah, and also like why would anybody like this about someone?
Right.
Well, I'll say that too. I mean, in fairness, and without the context that we all have with the show, you don't have much reason to like Michael. So it's like I can't blame him either for not liking the guy.
Right.
He is kind of a dick. Like, so he's a dick. None of his jokes the whole episode are funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's really no reason to be like, yeah, but I kind of like the guy. Like, there's really nothing for him in this episode that makes him redeemable.
I think at this point, though, obviously the character changes a lot as it goes on, but they're basically saying, look, this is a character who's going to step in it all the time. Don't you want to watch him do this every day in other situations? Like, they're not making him a redeemable character. They're making him this bad guy in the office, and it's going to be crazy what he does every single day.
Yeah, but you want to see, like, those characters, you want to see, like, get their comeuppance at least. You know what I mean? He doesn't really have that either yet. From there, you get the talking head, which is funny because he's talking about how, you know, the most important thing for him in a company is the people. But you see him, like, treating people like shit. But part of the conversation, though, and again, I think this is why we find out how he has his job. He's like, is it the fact that I increase profits by 17% or cut expenses without losing a single employee, which actually makes him a good boss?
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's none of that. And then he talks about how one time there was a young Guatemalan guy who worked there who barely spoke English. He came to him and said one day, Mr. Scott, would you be the godfather of my child? And he's like, wow. You know, he didn't work out in the end. We had to fire him, but he sucked.
We had to let him go, he sucked. It's so fucking great.
That's my favorite line of the whole episode.
It's funny because I've seen this episode a bunch of times. I do not remember that, and I laughed out loud at this.
So he's talking about the importance of people, but yeah, he really has a hard time connecting those lines. And then we get that like last scene, and it's end of the day. Everyone seems to be gone. And Pam's walking out of the bathroom after crying from being fake fired. Jim happens to be at his desk still. And she's like, hey, like, what are you still doing here? Like, I thought you were going to go to the bar with him. He's like, nah, and I know this was brought up earlier, and I just think he only was going to go in hopes that she would go.
Sure, yeah.
100%, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's what it was. I think he wanted to see her outside of work. I don't know if that meant he was going to do anything inappropriate, but now that she's not going, he doesn't want to be there. You know, they kind of have like a weird like banter. They don't really know like how to talk at this moment, but it's like, oh, like, you know, want to head out. And right as that happens, you hear a honking of the horn. It's like, oh, that's Roy. He's like, oh, all right, well, you know, you head off. And she leaves. And we get that one last shot. Now no one's in the office but Jim. He's like, actually, and he like into the camera, he's like, hey, like, come here real quick. You see Jim bring something over into Michael's office, and then he like takes the thing off the top of it, and it reveals that he put his world's best boss mug in Jello. And that was the close of the episode.
I think a perfect close.
I think that worked really well for the end. Yeah, with you get to see Jim and Pam one more time, and fun little prank rounds it out.
And also it leaves you wondering, do you think Michael gets mad at the Jello? Because Michael can be childish if he thinks something's against him, right? Like, it's different if it's a joke he thinks is funny. Or does he make Pam wash the mug? Like, that's probably what he does that next day, right?
Yeah, you kind of want to see what that reaction would be like.
You think it would be like when Todd Packer took a shit on his floor?
We know the next episode, if we're going to think it's the next day, is Diversity Day.
I wish that was a pilot. That's such a better episode.
I think Diversity Day would be a better pilot.
Who cut it originally? Was it Peacock or Netflix? It got cut for a little while.
It did cut for a while, which is
definitely
insane.
Watched it on Netflix, so maybe it was.
Yeah, I
Peacock.
think it was a Peacock thing.
I think Peacock originally, and people were just like, "This is silly, guys. It's poking fun at all of this." Like that's like a level too much, right? Where it's like the point of this is how insane this is and how absurd it is.
And that's the whole episode. And yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours. We've talked plenty. There's so much about The Office, and we tried pretty hard to not get too ahead too often. So, and I think for the most part, we did a good job of it. Just one of the biggest shows of all time. Just, it's been 20 years since this episode's come out. And I mean, we still see to this day, you know, where it stands with people. So it's just kind of crazy how big the show really became.
Is this show, I know, Jay, you touched on it a little bit, saying that it's like your all-time favorite. Is this Gordo, I get you don't like it, so this excludes you. So Joe and Ferg, is this in your top 3 all-time?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's top 3.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's definitely top 5.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like not even really a question either.
Yeah, top third I'd have to think about, but my top 2 of all time are Seinfeld and The Office.
Yeah.
I still have to give Seinfeld like a proper watch. I've seen a lot of it.
Same.
I've never really done a run through with it.
I've always said that if there's a situation in the world that you can't find an Office, a Seinfeld, or Simpsons reference that relates to it, that like I've never found it, right? Like I can always think of something in any scenario where I can relate any of those 3 shows to that moment. It's a joke, it's a situation, it's anything. And I think that, and I don't count The Simpsons as a sitcom. I think it stands alone as its own thing. I know we've talked about this before on the show. But I think if you give Seinfeld a try and you watch through it, you will find a lot of things like this where you're quoting it and you're thinking about it and it like lives in your brain a similar way.
Also 2 shows we covered.
I feel like one of the big differences, I know that they're kind of, now we've tackled episode 1, we did Friends, episode 100, we did Seinfeld, episode 200, we've done The Office. I don't know if this is a show big enough to fit in with that for like 300 or 400 at that point, but
yet
All in the Family.
I think one thing that The Office has over Seinfeld, in my opinion, and Friends is not as big for me, but is a gigantic show. You know what I mean? Like it's up there. It's like, I feel like those 3 shows are always kind of the conversation for like, what's the biggest?
Yeah.
I feel like Seinfeld doesn't have like that same level of like heart that The Office has, like emotionally as much, where like it stays pretty loose.
It does.
I'm not saying that's anything against it.
I agree with Jay only because all of the characters are assholes. They're funny. Like the show is funny, but they're all assholes.
Like you have like this show in The Office, a lot of like really emotional moments over the 9 seasons, and you know, you really want people to get together and things like that. And Seinfeld wasn't really formatted that way as much.
Yeah, Seinfeld wasn't about the love interests, and Seinfeld was just different. Yeah,
Seinfeld was its own sort of thing.
Its own thing.
Is the Seinfeld finale well received?
Very poorly received.
Right. So that's what I thought.
That was one of the most watched moments in television.
I watched it live. It was live on the Times Square like Titantron thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like my thing about Friends is, so you have The Office, which could argue that less about the finale, more about the last season and a half or so. Seinfeld's finale. Friends, I think just from start, and Joe, I know you greenlit our watch of it, but then decided that you didn't like it.
Yeah, I watched the first season and it didn't grab me.
That show from start to finish was just like constantly on the up, and just it all came together like perfectly. Like I don't think a sitcom has done it that well since. And I love The Office, and I'm not sure I could put it over Friends though. I think just from a purely just analytical on sitcom standpoint, Friends would have to be the number 1 for me at this point.
Simpsons would be number 1 for me.
The caveat there, though, is it a sitcom?
I argue yes, but it's just with a subcategory is all it is.
Animated sitcoms are sitcoms.
Well, with all of that in mind, you know, these are all conversations we could have at a later time. Might as well do the green light or cancel. I'll go in a weird order. Ferg, starting with you.
I'm a little on the fence with this. I never really liked this pilot particularly, but it had a lot of parts that made me laugh. I don't love Michael in this one, the rapid fire stuff before we get the Michael we know and love. Same with all the characters we eventually get their personalities. I think I came in here ready to cancel, but I've been swayed by our conversation today, and I think I am going to give it a light pass. So it does get the green light from me.
Nick.
So I was with Ferg that, this is something we've discussed for years now, that The Office pilot is not that great. And it's not compared to the rest of The Office. That doesn't mean I don't think that it's a bad pilot. This show has three things that I think separate it. Memorable characters, right? Like, these are characters that, even though we've seen them 1,000 times, you're going to remember Michael the next day, you're going to remember Dwight the next day, and you're going to, Jim and Pam, sure. I'm not sure they're as memorable, but at the very least, you're going to remember Michael. It's unique in its mockumentary style for the time, okay? At the time, this is not something that has been done very often. We thought about it. This is what we do. We go over sitcoms, and we couldn't think of anything besides Reno 911, which in and of itself is a little bit different anyways. So for uniqueness, there's another, point for it. And just like the overall tone of this show is unique enough that I think you have to give it a chance because it's so new in its time, and it's exciting. Like, I want to see more of, what it's weird because the chemistry between Jim and Pam is so weird, and you don't know how to feel about it, but you want to see more of it. She's got a boyfriend, but they're flirty. So right out of the gate, that's pulling you in a little bit too. So yes, it's not up to snuff as far as the rest of this series goes, for sure. But as a pilot standalone, it absolutely, there's no question that this is a very easy green light.
Gordo.
This is a cancel. Point blank. The only person who showed any type of character development in this or really had any kind of spotlight was Michael. And he was not a likable character. Why am I going to watch? So as far as I know right now, that I am practically blind, Michael is the focal point of this show. It's not an equal ensemble. It's Michael. Why do I want to watch a show about Michael? He's annoying as fuck. And he's mean. There's just not a lot of the supporting cast there to balance that out, I think, that make it worth watching, to make it worth him getting a comeuppance or anything like that. I understand down the line, yeah, sure, this develops into literally a juggernaut. And there's a reason for it. But that doesn't show in this episode at all. I mean, if I'm playing executive, I say scrap this episode, go to another one that's maybe a little bit more fleshed out, where maybe you have more of Oscar, like you don't even see Oscar in this. You have one line from Stanley. You have one line from, what's her name? Angela. You know what I mean? It's just Michael, a little bit of Dwight, a little bit of Jim, a little bit of Pam. That's not enough if I'm judging it on this episode alone. So because I haven't seen the rest of the series, I don't have that nostalgia. I don't have that love relationship with this show. So no, I don't want to see another episode. He just annoyed the shit out of me for 23 minutes. So now with that being said, may I watch another episode down the line? May I give it a shot? Maybe. But like, if I'm going just straight off of this, no, sorry, cancel.
All right, I'll jump in. For me, I can't see myself canceling an episode of The Office, and it's tough. I'm trying very hard to separate everything and watch it for what it is. And I know this episode has fault in it's tonally, like it's tough to adapt to. There's not a lot of like laugh out loud type of comedy, but I think it's there. I think there's the makings of something. I'm interested. I'll tell you, like, for me, like just the Jim and Pam thing right away, like I'm already hooked just from what little I see here. Like I want to see, You know, Television 101, they're going to get these two together, and I want to see what that road looks like for them. But yeah, no, it's a green light for me. It's the show becomes so much more, but I think here we're already seeing enough. Joe.
Look, it's hard to divorce yourself from this stuff. I think Gordo's right with his point. I don't think this is the greatest pilot. I think there are other episodes of the season. I think the next episode would have been a better pilot to give you everything about this show. And I feel like I can honestly say, without being biased, when I first saw this show, I had not known anything about it. I put a disc in, I watched the first episode, I laughed at it, and then I watched another season and a half of it within 12 hours, right? And I've been watching it ever since. So knowing nothing about it then, I found it funny. I've seen this so many times. When he says we have to let him go, he sucked, I laughed again. I'll always laugh at certain lines. I think this is one of the greatest sitcoms ever. It might not be the greatest pilot, but it makes you want to watch another episode. So for me, it's a green light.
Well, you swerved me. For a second, I thought you were going with the cancel.
No, I love this. I loved this pilot when I first saw it. It's hard to not watch it. It's like it's hard. It's easier now, right? It's easier to like it now, knowing how much you like the history of everything that comes up. But I like that I actually have a point in time where I can say I knew nothing about this. I watched it, and I had the choice to watch a million other things. And I said I'll watch episode 2, and then a day later was like trying to catch up on the third season that was halfway through on TV and having no way to do it, like looking at the NBC On Demand screen in 2008 or whatever it was, being like, can I catch up to this so I can start watching this on Thursday?
It's funny, too, because Jay kind of mentioned it, too. I did, too, in mine. The whole Jim and Pam thing. I'm currently rewatching the series. I started a few months ago, so I've been watching it here and there. And I'm towards the end of season 7 right now. And watching this episode and just seeing Jim and Pam where they are at this point, I'm like, man, I just kind of want to start fresh again and just like watch the progression of those two pan out again, because it's just such like a fucking wild ride that you just want to see it happen again. And that's why it's so rewatchable, just because it's so, there's so much happening in every episode, but they still also have like this underlying storyline that's fantastic.
For me, the first 3 seasons, watching them progress, seasons 1, 2, and 3, is like unmatched. And then like after that, it is what it is.
But I mean, I think the 3rd season of this show is probably the most well reviewed, because everything kind of crescendos, and they still manage to keep going for, 4 more seasons after, or 5 more seasons after that.
I mean, if you think about it, season 2 starts with the Dundies, ends with Jim actually kissing Pam, Pam saying, I'm getting engaged, and season 3 starts with him moving. Like there's like, it just, like those seasons are just like, oh my God, it just keeps going.
With all that in mind, because we've been going on for a really long time. So guys, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank The Office. Obviously you got the green light with us with a 4 out of 5. Thank you guys for listening. Again, S1E1pod.com is where you can go to find all the links to where you can follow us, our social medias. Please do that. Hit us up, rate, review, do all that stuff. Let us know shows you want us to do. We're 200 in, but we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So just help us grow that list. Let us know shows you want us to do, and we'll eventually get to them. Thanks to all of you guys for being here for all this time. Thank you to the 4 of you guys. It's been fun, 200 episodes, and we're going to keep rolling. So until next week, we'll see you again. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best Roy murder bag.